Since then, the world has been captivated by the transformation that's taken place.
Hillary convinced, I guess, the president to take this decision.
He died.
And nearly destroyed a previously stable and secular country.
Is make a deal with an ExxonMobil or one of our great companies to go in there and do it properly.
Was it hell if you weren't a terrorist when you came in here? By the time you leave, I'm sure you would be.
ISIL is a direct outgrowth of al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out of our invasion.
We are putting America first.
These revolutions are not ours, but we do have a role. We have the resources, capabilities, and expertise to support those who seek peaceful, meaningful democratic reform.
There's a great debate on the role of social media during and especially at the outset of the Arab Spring. What most of us analysts have, talked about is the three major T's.
أنا عن نفسي يعني واحدة مش بروفيشنال قوي في التصوير. صورت فيديو أثر في ناس كتير وشجع ناس إن هم يعني يشيلوا النظام عامة.
The trick is that you don't push, you pull. What you're actually doing is actually persuading these people from the police force, from military force, that there will be a place for them in the new region. One of the tricks is making everybody busy. Okay? Because when people are busy, they don't have time to be afraid. Sounds crazy, but this is exactly what they do in the military training, okay? So the way you're doing it nonviolent struggle is actually you create this group identity. You want people to sing because songs make them work together. You want whistles, you want music, you want fun. This is a very important part. And now it looks like a big, how do you call it, love parade.
Ben Ali, la c'est l'université. On a refusé l'université, on a refusé Ben Ali 23 ans. On est fatigué.
I am to let go the RCD away from us, and it's time for us to start, and it's time for us to get to feel the democracy like you and like the people in America.
been less than 2 years since a vendor in Tunisia set himself on fire to protest the oppressive corruption in his country and sparked what became known as the Arab Spring. And since then, the world has been captivated by the transformation that's taken place. And the United States has supported the forces of change.
A greater Middle East project, that Washington's goal was to turn the Middle East into a free market paradise like they had turned Poland and the countries of Eastern Europe with shock therapy. That's hardly a plausible explanation in my view. I think they're getting well financed by American intelligence services for doing this. And the target countries they target, like Egypt and most recently, and so are precisely the countries that are on the Pentagon agenda for destabilization and regime change.
Where the United States feels deeply ambivalent about, is this good for American interests in economic and security terms? Will we get reliable access to Gulf oil? Will we get the kind of cooperation on counterterrorism that were useful if we have in place popularly elected governments in the Arab world?
إلى ما وصلت إليه لبنان. كنا نؤول زمنا تغير، صرنا نبرر زمنا أتى. يأتي الربيع إذا احترق الفتى، وتسألني سكينة عن الربيع هل أتى؟ أقول هذا ربيع خاتل متهافت الألوان أخون من خريف.
صب الماء. في غربة حياتي خسارة، والناس قلبه من هدايا طيارة، عايش كيف مهبول.
14 جانفي ما يعمليني شيء.
هما توا عاملين زعما 14 جانفي وجايبينك رماق يغني ودرشنية يحكوا خذوا حق. عندكم 100 حق ماكمش ماخذينهم. صارت ثورة وما فهم شيء. كان خلعوا مجازان ودرشنية ولا تكلموا ولا خذوا حقهم، صارت ثورة كيكة بالبلاد.
بيلي باش تقيد انا باش ينقصوا في الحليب وفي الخبز واحد. على القليلة خلوا الزاوية ياكل تكون زوية ولا تشوف فين.
توانسة يحبوا بعضهم. لوخ هذيك كل واحد راهو يحب بروحه. الانتخابات ما تعنيني شيء، ذيك بالنسبة لي أنا نهار يمشوا ينتخبوا فيه العباد. من حقك باش تنتخب، حق ما تحبش تتمتع بيه ما يشدك حد. أمورك هذيك. خاطر شدوها برشا البلاد هذيا وما قدها حد. برشا السرقة وبرشا التفكير اللي يشدها يتصدم ما عاد ينجم يعمل شيء. يقعد نبات يولوا هما يقودوا فيه بالمشتى الرئيس يبدا من تالي وراه. ميزانية ما فماش جملة، وليت علاش تونس في العالم الثالث؟ خاطر فماش عالم رابع. كان جا فما عالم رابع راهي في الرابع، كان جا فما خامس راهي في الخامس.
happened to a woman this weekend who said she'd been gang raped by Gaddafi's militia.
Where their loved ones have been killed and the Gaddafi troops have already buried them.
Don't tell me about the stories about Gaddafi killing his own people, the bombardment of Fashloum, the district in Tripoli, the use of mass rape as a weapon, the use of Viagra tablets as a weapon. That's completely false.
Western NGOs went in and found out that none of this was true. But it was reported at the time, and it was reported by BBC, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, all the TV networks in the West.
We've seen many dead bodies of Libyans shot in the street.
You cannot do a NATO intervention without the support of the United States. And at the time, the Secretary of State was Hillary Clinton. Clearly, she's building a political career for herself, and she wants to take a position in the world stage.
Hillary, convinced, I guess, the president to take this decision.
NATO intervention was decisive in tipping the balance of power back in favor of the rebels. And also, of course, the training of rebel forces by foreign security and intelligence agencies enabled those rebels to move into the West and eventually to topple Gaddafi and to take control of Tripoli.
We came, we saw, he died.
تو يمكن هذه يمكن غدوة ناخذ فلوس وبعدها بشهرين ثانيات ما عادش نحصل.
Thousands of militias across the country are saying that right now it's time for change.
خطف وقتل وجرام. I want now new Libya. الله أكبر.
أمريكا هي اللي السبب الفوضى اللي في ليبيا. طيحت القذافي ما درس بديل. خلتنا فوضى حرب في بعضنا. قذافي نو أمريكا. تو هذول كلهم. أنا قاتلت في جبهة زندان وفي جبهة بن وليد ضد القذافي. ناو كان في قذافي أنا في قاتل مع قذافي.
نسبة أكثر من 80% الداخل في المدينة في حد ذاتها. بالنسبة في الأطراف في تهديدات وفي تحركات. لا تبقى حكومة الوفاق. هي في إشكالية كبيرة بالتأكيد. أنت عارف أن الحوافز المادية والأمور المادية هي الحافز الأول. يعني الشباب لما يتكلف بعمل ويقدم نفسه واجب على الدولة أن هي توفر له مقابل.
ثورة مدنية ونديروا جيش مستقل مش زي جيش القذافي قصدي كتائب تحمي كشخص. ايه ورفعنا الطاغية هذا والظالم هذايا كاين ظالم الشعب الليبي بالكامل ومعيشة في جهل. قمنا بالثورة هذه من أجل العلم ومن أجل الحكم المدني. لكن اتضح أن التدخلات الأجنبية ما تبيش الكلام هذايا تبي تقسيم ليبيا من أجل أجندة أخرى نحن لا نعلمها. قصدي باش يطمعوا في ارزاق ليبيا باش ما تصدمهاش فايدتهم انا تقعد ليبيا قصدي دوله واحده يد خط واحد لا ضروري تقسم باش اجل يطمعوا في ارزاقها وينهبوها ويشربوا الشعب الليبي.
ان ما فيش حد يتمنى ان يقتل اخوه الليبي بس الواقع اللي صاير ان التدخلات هي اللي تبي الشعب في بعضه يقتل بعضه لمصالحهم الشخصيه.
فيصل حبل والمركب هو تو غارق فيه ميه فيه ميه قلبه. قديش مخلص؟ اشوف شوي قديش مخلص فلوس انت؟ ها؟ 2000 يورو. بتعود الصنعه متاعك وتتكلم انت وياه بتدير دوشه.
نقوم بترحيلهم إلى مراكز اللواء. أكيد الأمر يحزنني أنا شخصياً ويحزن كل الطاقم، ولكن هذه طبيعة عملنا. إنقاذ البشر، كانوا حيموتوا، كانوا حيواجهوا الغرق في البحر، فتم إنقاذهم والحمد لله. كانت ليبيا أكثر شعوب المنطقة أو دول المنطقة شمال أفريقيا لا يوجد لدينا رئيس دولة وتشريع، ولهذا الانفلات الأمني.
This morning, President Obama called on Assad to step aside. The transition to democracy in Syria has begun, and it's time for Assad to get out of the way.
احنا طلعنا اجت القذيفة ما بعرف وين. اجت القذيفة انا وقعت.
كثير كان في عندي نوع من الحنق على هذا الشخص اللي كان يقوس على المرأة، على الطفل، على الكذا بحية. نزلوه من السيارة، قتلوه، مثلوا بجثته وجثة ابنه. أوضحت إن هي ما ثورة، لا. فأنا زعلت، ومن أثناءها كانت هي الدافع الأكبر، لأنه أنا مع حكومتي ومع بلدي ومع الجيش.
بعض الأمور في سوريا لا يحمل السلاح ويقتل الجيش ويقتل الشرطة ويقتل المدنيين. المطالب السلمية هي من أصابتني في الرصاص.
The Western liberal response, a sort of Pavlovian reaction to these things, is to go and support them. It was bad man, good people, didn't really count how many, we've got to go and help them. We started looking at options which ranged from Iraq-style full intervention through a training commitment through to what we ended up doing, which was minimalist.
And so large areas of Syria were occupied by the so-called moderate rebels who were being armed through Operation Timber Sycamore, a multi-billion-dollar CIA and Pentagon-run CIA-run operation primarily, that brought money from the Gulf states, particularly Qatar, and weapons from the U.S. and training into the hands.
With the U.S., especially with the USAID, it's been funneling millions of dollars to do what they say is helping set up independent media in Syria, in rebel areas. Because journalists can't go into rebel areas, because if they do, they will be killed or kidnapped even more, because those rebel groups, which is something you also don't hear in the U.S. press almost ever.
دخان عم تطلع من دارهم وصوت ولاويل. فت على جيراننا هيك عم يحترقوا نسوان واطفال كلياتهم. وقت صرنا نطفيهم هيك انا عم طفيهم قمت دست بجثة الطفل.
The general sentiment that I got being in both Damascus and Aleppo is people across the board pretty much loathe the rebels. And I mean, that includes people who are critical of the government. They loathe the rebels. And that's one of the reasons the government is still able to be in control, is because it has a level of support from the Syrian population. But when you go to Syria, the people that are being shelled by the rebels, whose families, like Christians and Druze and other minorities, whose families have been kidnapped, killed, or forcibly converted by the rebels, or even other Muslims who've experienced repression under the rebels, they laugh when you call them this name. In fact, one person in particular told me, please stop calling them rebels. It's an insult to us. These people, in Syria, they call them terrorists.
It was crazy because everyone's running and people just keep coming. At that time, we didn't know what's going on. People are just like a lot of foams coming out from their mouth. Their eyes bowl are going smaller and then they die. I saw a lot of bodies. Most of them are children. The doctor told me that this is all evidence of a sarin attack or a sarin gas.
I'm absolutely sure that the authorities of Syria do not have any motivation, do not have any interest of using chemical weapons against opposition.
A former Obama advisor said the red line, which is, the red line for a chemical weapons attack necessitating a U.S. military intervention, the red line is a recipe for a false flag. And that is what we saw. I'm very careful about saying this was a false flag. These academics I mentioned who have helped provide the OPCW whistleblowers' testimony to journalists like Jonathan Steele, Peter Hitchens. They've been raising the question of whether the White Helmets were involved in arranging the bodies of the victims. And that, again, would be well within the MO of the White Helmets, who are simply what we think of as kind of activists.
Okay, the White Helmets.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Documented video that we've reported on, Ben Norton and I at the Gray Zone, of White Helmets uniformed members participating in executions of people who were convicted of violating the brutal Wahhabi theocratic law, where the White Helmets were basically the MASH unit that rolled in after some poor guy had his head blown off for violating theocratic law. And let's show some video right now of White Helmets celebrating after the city of Idlib was taken over by Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, which was a coalition led by Jabhat al-Nusra.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
At the Oscars in, I think it was 2017, Hollywood celebrities and all of these elite liberals were asked to stand on their feet and cheer for the White Helmets. You can understand that this has been, one of the most successful propaganda operations in recent history. a group that was created and funded by the US and worked hand in glove with literal jihadist groups. And the figure who is responsible for it is now being cheered on as a hero. But this group was part and parcel of an operation aimed at destabilizing Syria that led to the worst refugee crisis since World War II and nearly destroyed a previously stable and secular country. But we also know that the White Helmets put out petitions on their own website calling for a no-fly zone, which is code for Western military intervention. So what kind of humanitarian operation lobbies for sanctions on civilian population? This wasn't a humanitarian group. We also know that Riyad al-Saleh, the spokesman of the White Helmets, the Syrian spokesman, repeatedly visited Washington to lobby great humanitarians like Elliot Engel, who is like the finger puppet of AIPAC, for the so-called Caesar sanctions bills on Syria, which have generated some of the most crushing sanctions on a civilian population we've ever seen, and which left many Syrians in the dark and in the cold last winter because they couldn't get heating oil.
Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women, and children. Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack
اعطيني كف شوي يلا خليه ايده يا شباب ارجعوا من هون يا شباب
علاء لك تصوري لك لازق عم يفريلك لك تصوري لك حرام عليك تصوري يوم جبت لك حليب علاء ابو شحاطك علاء قوم
اللي على النبي
ابو شحاطك علاء لك علاء ابو شحاطك
الله أكبر يلا يلا يلا
ما يكون فعلا يعني minutes والله ما من زمان
I left troops to take the oil. I took the oil.
What I intend to do, perhaps, is make a deal with an ExxonMobil or one of our great companies to go in there and do it properly. Right now it's not big. It's big oil underground, but it's not big oil up top.
وصلنا يلا انزلوا
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. By destroying camps and disrupting communication, initially the terrorists may burrow deeper into caves and other entrenched hiding places.
دا بمبار چې وشو دوم چراغ لما دلته مې ومې کته چې یو ورور مې پراته ده داسې یو بل رقم ورور مې و چې چغه مې ووهه هر څونه هغه چې دلته زړه ته مې لاس وکړ چې سړی ختم ده ما ویل زه یو خو لاړه هماغه یو پسې زما زړه ډېر هغه شو نور ټول مې وکته چې خدایه موږ تباه شوي ټول ورونه Rajani.
But once the bombing began, and in the lead up to it, it was no longer just about we want to have bin Laden. It was about the Taliban state. There were actually offers to turn over bin Laden by the Taliban, and the United States refused. They wanted a surrender directly to the United States. And by April of 2002, it was very apparent to the Americans that they couldn't just sweep in, overthrow a regime, and walk away. You needed to build a new government.
دومره دنیا کې ځوانه په دومره ښه معیشتونه کې دومره ښه شیونه کې ما تاسو ایله بیله په ګوډرو ځان واړولو په شیشم ځان واړولو
داسې نصیب او قسمت و معلوم نه ده چې دا نصیب قسمت و دا د دشمن کار و نه پوهېږم مقصد همداسې روان یو
نو یاره نو مشرف کله ناکله وګورې دا خپل دا صنعتونو ته دا چېرته په کار و ننخوا ځکه مې ځان سره راوړ چې دې ته ګورو ځوانه او دغې ته ګورو نو ځمکې اسمان فرق دی سړی جګرخونه شي بلکل راته جړه راشي چې یاره چیزی دست برداری هنا وكنشكي كيني باسا هنا تمكنا وكنشكي أبا بيبي أفشا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم زخو بيلا ستاسو او د دیرونو ډیر مننه او ډیر تشکرې ادا کوم چې لکه دا د مسلمانانو په حساب د افغاني ورونو په حساب ځوانه تاسو ته دا احساس دا دغه راغی چې تاسو هم زمونږ یو احساس معلوم کړئ زمونږ یو درک زمونږ هغه دردونه واورئ ما خپل کپړو کاروبار کولو لکه جلال آباد کې خپل کلیم دی
خدایا څنګه ژوند خدایا ته په موږ رحم وکړې
They're a very simple farming family. They don't speak English, but they showed me a paper that was given to them with the body. And that's when I opened it up and read it, and it was in English, and it was a death certificate from the American military. And it was signed by a US major who was the pathologist, and there were 4 boxes, and she ticked the box for homicide. I said, my God, they've killed him. And we then had to tell the family, do you know what's written here? And they said, no, it's in English, we don't understand. And I think maybe the Red Cross, who helped return the body, had explained, but they hadn't taken it in. And then the pathologist had said it was this blunt force trauma to the legs.
It's not just a disorientation procedure, it's actually a terrorizing procedure. It's designed to terrify you into spilling the beans, as it were. Being spat at, being sworn at, having the dogs barking around, cameras flashing in your face.
Keep in mind, in their culture, that dog's more shocking to them than it is to us. Kind of like a woman telling them what to do. You know, it's a cultural thing. So you get more bang for your buck over there with the dog.
And then to be reshackled completely naked and to do what they call the body search, the cavity search.
His interrogations are well documented in a log, and from November 2002 until early January 2003, he was subjected to this regime. It involved very severe sleep deprivation. He was only permitted to sleep 4 hours a day from 7 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock in the morning, and that lasted for 50 days with one exception. He was held in severe isolation and sensory deprivation. The combination of his lack of food intake and forcible hydration led him at one point to actually his heart slow down to 35 beats a minute, and he was rushed to the hospital to be revived.
Not long after Dilawar was killed, we learned that the
Afghan guerrilla commander whose men had arrested Dilawar and the others had in fact been detained by the Americans himself. And it turned out that he was rocketing their base and then picking up innocent Afghans and turning them over to the Americans, essentially to try to ingratiate himself with the U.S. forces.
You really can't get a feel for a person until after you talk to him a couple times. So on the first 3 times I talked to him, it was just verifying his story, looking for loops, looking for holes. After the 3rd time I talked to him and his story was still consistent, I kept telling him I thought he was innocent.
And they wanted these people to be guilty because that would look better for their unit. They could say that we arrested 60 people this month and they were all terrorists.
او بالکل د لور ته موږ وخت د دعا لپاره قبر ته راځو او د ته په حساب کې د نورو مردگانو په حساب کې دعا کوو موږ وخت د تم دعا کوو د نورو مردگانو تم دعا کوو خدای دې شهادت قبول کړي دو
خو یو وړي که ماشوم بچاو چې دی مړ کو بګنو نو بدلون خدا بدلون چې په هیڅ شیا نه پیدو نه په چی پیدو نه په مړی پیدو نه په کیسا پیدو.
Mr. Attorney General, do you believe that statements obtained through illegal, inhumane treatment which should be admissible?
Senator, well, again, I'll say this. The concern that I would have about such a prohibition is what does it mean, how you define it.
In addition to the terrorists held at Guantanamo, a small number of suspected terrorist leaders and operatives captured during the war have been held and questioned outside the United States in a separate program operated by the Central Intelligence Agency. Some ask, why are you acknowledging this program now? Some believe our military and intelligence personnel involved in capturing and questioning terrorists could now be at risk of prosecution under the War Crimes Act, simply for doing their jobs in a thorough and professional way. This is unacceptable.
They threw him on an aircraft and they rendered him through extraordinary rendition to Egypt. They later subjected him to 2 weeks of brutal torture involving all these techniques, including waterboarding. And they got information from al-Libi stating that Saddam Hussein's regime had trained al-Qaeda in chemical and biological warfare. A year later, the CIA branded al-Libi a fabricator, rescinded all the intelligence reports with that information in it. So in other words, you will get information, but you'll get false information.
When Iraq finally admitted having these weapons in 1995, the quantities were vast. Less than a teaspoonful of dry anthrax in an envelope shut down the United States Senate in the fall of 2001. This forced several hundred people to undergo emergency medical treatment.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil. Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict.
I was going out amidst all of that. I was looking for cigarettes. It got dark. And I look up and there's this black cloud that engulfed everything around me. And I remember, like, I was just like, what's going on?
صاروخ هذا وقع هنا بهذا المكان. اي نعم، صاروخ وقع هنا وصاروخ. هاي البطانية للعصر. حتى دم فيها. هذا يعني لا ابو 3 ساعات انقصف علينا ابو.
Him and another brother of his were the only ones that survived. Honestly, I had my reservations, and I was like, this is just very unreal. Like, this is too much. Too much.
اسمها الجغرافيا. راح هو سيدرس هناك في الآخرة.
The Iraqi soldiers and officers must ask themselves whether they want to die fighting for a doomed regime. What will follow will not be a repeat of any other conflict. It will be of a force and scope and scale beyond what has been seen before.
From Texas? Is it like what everybody's saying in Texas?
If you go from a repressive regime, we've seen in that transition period there's untidiness. Freedom's untidy, and free people are free to make mistakes and commit crimes and do bad things. Stuff happens.
يعني السبب لحد الان ما حد يعرف ليش.
نتامل الجهاد ان شاء الله، يعني الجهاد احنا
شلون ما حد يعرف، لحد الان ما حد يعرف شو يصير ما يصير. يعني تمشي بسيارتك يسلبون سيارتك، بيتك ما تامن، غراضك فلوسك حلالك ما تامن عليه، لحد الان ما مأمن. كل عائله كل عدد. كل عدد
4 سلاحات مو سلاح واحد. 4 مو واحد. نمشي بالشارع هاي تعبنا.
دوشكي هاون رباعي دوشكي
رباعي
رباعي دوشكي أسلحة ثقيلة رباعي.
Major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
ناس مسلحين وما نخليهم هنا يجون يمنا ويمنوا بيوتنا، خلي يروحون بغير مكان.
صحيح انت اخي في الانسانيه، اخي في الانسانيه، اخي في مسؤوليتك، لان انت اللي جيت. لازم تامن بصوره صحيحه، لان انت عبر القارات تقول انت تسوي امن.
security. That's why you cross all those 1,000 miles.
صحيح. I would like.
That's right. It's your wish, but then you came in for
Right.
this purpose.
Exactly.
This is your purpose.
This is very important. What's going on right now in Iraq?
يقول كل يصير بالعراق هسه نيجي احنا جينا.
joke, you know. I'm asking all the Americans here or in America or Mr. Bush, because sooner or later we will hate Mr. Bush, you know, because he is not trying to help civilian people.
Stay out here.
Why? Why? We were very safe when Saddam was here. What happened now?
Children, all blood.
كلهم احنا مش مستفادين من بوش مستفادين هاي جهالنا طالع انا على ابو بوش لا ابو امريكا لا ابو الهوى لا ابو الثاني نمشي سوي هاي جهاله
رجعنا ليش تحموا علينا
شنو تعلمهم هم خلي يسوون عمايه قواويل خلي يسوون عمايه ترسيه جهالي راحوا
الله يسامحكم والله شنو ذنبهم
واحد يزوع دمه بغداد
اعتل على انتو
On your knees. On your knees. Down. Yeah. No, down. Get down. Down.
A few who have betrayed our values and sullied the reputation of our country. Like each of you, I'm sure, and like most Americans, I was stunned. I've stopped reading the newspapers.
If you say over the course of Afghanistan, Gitmo, and Iraq, we've detained 50,000 people, I'd say less than 1% were terrorists. Were some of them insurgents? Probably. Were almost all of them in Iraq in particular going to become insurgents after their treatment? Yes.
I was kidnapped, abducted, falsely imprisoned, tortured, and threatened with further torture without charge, without trial. Even many soldiers had said to me afterwards, was it hell if you weren't a terrorist when you came in here, by the time you leave, I'm sure you would be because of the way you've been treated.
Day after day, month after month, telegenic images of American troops abusing Muslims. This was exactly what al-Qaeda wanted to create. I mean, if you look at the images from Abu Ghraib, they might as well be recruitment posters made on Madison Avenue for the jihadi cause. The first result of that was the insurgency itself. The second result of it is ISIS. $400,000 young men onto the streets without any salaries and with simply their guns. So we humiliated these people. We laid the seeds down for the insurgency without a doubt. In effect, the United States created ISIS. Nothing like it existed before the American occupation.
اقسم بالله العظيم وهاي الشباب كلها بس خلي باكر وشوفوا القماش الجديد والله العظيم لو سقط له بغداد بساعتين
أذكر الفجر أو الصبح هكذا سمعت صوت مكبرات صوت، ونحن الدولة الإسلامية في العراق والشام.
The army that used to insult the people on daily basis in the checkpoints have disappeared. They collapsed.
ISIL is a direct outgrowth of al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out of our invasion, which is an example of unintended consequence.
My father name is Michael. I live in Westchester, New York, in Philadelphia. ولن يصلكم منا إلا النذروش وسر المريض والتوافيت تلو والتوافيت ذبحا على هذه الطريقة.
We are putting America first. At the same time, we're here to help others. May God bless you. May God protect you. And may God always keep you safe.
قررنا انه نحن نتحرك، ننزح من البيت لان ما بعد نتحمل، يعني خلاص. فبدت الهاونات، الجيش يقصف، داعش يقصف. ونحن بالنص تماما. جلسنا بمجموعة ضحك على أطفال وقال أنا آسف إنه جبتكم على هذه الحياة وما حافظت عليكم. أعتذر لأنه كنت السبب بإنه تمشون حفاي بهذا البرد. أعتذر لأنه الكل تخلى عنا. أعتذر كثير لأنه عايشين بهذا البلد.